be sharing with you the title, Can Dana Compensate for the Lack of Sila? Okay. Okay, so if you study, the Sutta Pitaka, in the Pali Canon carefully, you actually discover that it's actually quite remarkable that the Buddha, the Blessed One, he has actually emphasized time and time again, in various suttas, the importance of actually observing our sila, and also preserving our virtues. And in this regard, the Buddha, he has actually emphasized the importance of keeping our 5 precepts, and on top of that, the Buddha also emphasized in many suttas the danger, of not observing sila, and also the danger of committing the 5 unwholesome actions, which the Buddha has emphasized time and time again for us not to commit these 10 unwholesome actions. And if one were to continue, repeating, performing these 10 unwholesome actions, then one is actually creating the potential, and the potential for one to be reborn in the woeful planes. And of course, these 10 unwholesome actions, as I've actually highlighted in my previous talks before, these 10 unwholesome actions are killing, stealing, sensual misconduct, telling of lies, divisive speech, speaking, malicious speech, and also slanderous speech, in breaking up people's harmonious relationship, and also harsh speech, speak in very harsh language, and also idle talk, tale bearing, gossiping, and also covetousness. That means you actually covet, and you would actually long after other people's possessions, and ill will, and ill will is not the normal anger, but ill will, is the extent of it's a very strong ill will to the extent you want someone to be annihilated, you want someone to be killed, So that is the kind of action that will actually bring one down to the woeful plane. And of course, the last one is actually wrong views. So the Buddha has actually highlighted time and time again for us not to perform any of these 10 unwholesome actions. And of course, we must actually, make sure, we observe, our 5 precepts at all times, assiduously, so that we keep our sila untainted. That's what the Buddha has asked us to do. Okay, but despite what the Buddha actually has highlighted in terms of importance of keeping our sila and also our virtue, I've actually often heard Buddhists in general comment, some of my Buddhist friends often comment that it's actually quite challenging for us to actually observe the 5 precepts, let alone the 10 unwholesome actions, because of their daily work. And also the daily lives, they often confess, sometimes they may not be able to keep the 5 precepts that well, and to the extent that they might actually break some of the precepts, and also perhaps perform, some of these 10 unwholesome actions, sometimes out of greed, hatred and delusion, and sometimes also because of being unmindful, they are not actually mindful, and they actually commit these actions, and of course, because of that, they actually compromise on their sila, so and because of this, they often have this view, they often hold this view that well, I may actually, even though I might actually break my precepts, I'll try to compensate this, by doing more good deeds, perhaps by performing more dana, by being more charitable, being more generous, supporting the monks, as well as if there's any calamities or disasters, I'll try to contribute, in terms of financially, or in terms of my time, to actually support these causes, which are all means of, providing showing our charity or practicing, generosity, So they often hold this perception or this view, that well, I may not actually be so perfect in my sila, because of my work, uh, and also because of certain circumstances, I'm not able to preserve my sila, but I can always compensate this, by doing more dana, and generosity, very much so like some businessmen, they may actually be involved in certain illegal activities like smuggling or human trafficking, which are actually wrong livelihood. And it's actually definitely in actually breaches, morality and sila. But they actually hold the view that, well, to compensate this, maybe, I'll donate large sums of money to temples, and in the course of doing that, I will try to offset, the bad karma, of not being able to observe my sila that well, in terms of my job and my occupation, So the question now is this actually what is this actually effective? Is this actually the case where you can offset your bad karma, by actually practicing good karma in terms of dana? The bad karma are actually not preserving or not observing your sila, can you actually compensate it and offset it, by actually doing more dana and generosity? So that is the question that needs to be answered, and you know, and some of the Buddhists, actually hold the view that yeah, I should think so. It's you're able to offset the unwholesome actions that you have performed, by breaking your precepts. Yes, I think you can compensate it, by actually doing more charity and being more generous, because the Buddha has actually mentioned in the sutta, which is called the lump of salt. They actually hold this view that, well, the Buddha himself says, if you actually put the lump of salt into a glass of water, then it's actually going to be very salty, and it's not drinkable. But as compared to one putting this same amount of lump of salt into the Ganges River, that because the volume of the Ganges River is so huge, so it is not, it's not even salty, at all, So because of that, so they actually regard this lump of salt as bad karma, and you actually place it and dilute it in a huge amount of water, and this huge amount of water is actually, they compare it, to wholesome karma, by performing dana. So they actually hold this view that, well, even if I bring my precept, this lump of salt, if I put it, into this Ganges River, and I perform a lot of dana and a lot of charity, I'll be able to dilute, this unwholesome karma of breaking my precepts, by virtue of doing more dana, just like the Ganges River, I'll be able to dilute this salt. So now the question here is that really the case? I mean, is that really, can you really offset the bad karma, of not observing sila, by dana? So that is the question that we actually need to answer and address, in this Dhamma discussion, So instead of us speculating and forming our own opinions, let us pose this question to the Buddha, the Blessed One, and see how he has actually responded in the Pali suttas. Okay, first of all, I'd like to refer you to this very interesting sutta, which I actually, have highlighted in my previous Dhamma talks. It is actually extracted from this Anguttara Nikaya, which is actually the book of 10. As you know, the Anguttara Nikaya has got 11 books. So I'm actually extracting this from book of 10, and this sutta is actually sutta number 177, and it's actually called the Janusoni Sutta. So this sutta actually records this very interesting conversation between a Brahmin, by the name of Janusoni. So one day, this Janusoni, he actually approached the Buddha. He actually went to meet the Buddha one day, and of course he exchanged greetings with him. And in this conversation, this Janusoni actually posed a very interesting question to the Buddha. Because as you know, Brahmins during that time, they actually had this practice of giving gifts, and perform memorial rites for the dead, very much like what we Chinese do. Whenever death happens, right, we will actually perform memorial rites, and we actually offer food, and gifts to the departed. We actually offer perhaps like some cakes, rice, and maybe food offerings, to the departed, with the hope that the departed will be able to partake, of this food offering, So this Brahmin actually had this question in his mind. He asked the Buddha. He actually asked the Buddha. If you look at the second paragraph here, he says, Master Gautama, can our gift actually be of benefit to our departed relatives and family members? Can our departed relatives and family members actually partake of our gift? So that's the question that this 𝓿𝙗𝙖𝙢𝙢𝙖 actually posed to the Buddha. And of course, the Buddha actually says, yes, the departed, he will be able to benefit and partake of these gifts, but only on the right occasion, but not on the wrong occasion. And of course, this sutta proceeds by actually explaining how the Buddha actually explains to this 𝓿𝙗𝙖𝙢𝙖 in terms of what a right occasion and wrong occasion is. And of course, to summarize this, the Buddha actually says that the wrong occasion is in a situation where one does not actually observe the sila, and he performs again the 10 unwholesome actions. See, the Buddha again, time and time again, he actually highlights about these 10 unwholesome actions. So in this sutta, again, the Buddha talks about the 10 unwholesome actions. So we must actually take heed of what the Buddha says, and don't think that this is just something that that is actually fabricated, or the Buddha actually just says this with no basis. The Buddha actually time and time again talks about these 10 unwholesome actions. So we must be very, very careful not to perform any of these 10 unwholesome actions, or else you are actually creating the potential to gravitate towards the lower realms of existence. So that is actually very important. So don't just observe the 5 precepts. That itself is not enough. You must make sure the 10 unwholesome actions are also not performed at all times. So the Buddha says, if someone actually performs these 10 unwholesome actions, then in the end, he gets reborn as a hungry ghost, or what we call here an afflicted spirit, who's always being tormented by hunger and thirst. So the Buddha says that if one is actually reborn as an afflicted spirit or hungry ghost, then this hungry ghost, is actually very near, it's actually very, very near to our human realm, So for example, if somebody actually passes away and he actually becomes a hungry ghost, he may be wandering around, the funeral, or he may be somewhere around the house, So if you actually make food offering to this hungry ghost, actually, this hungry ghost is actually able to partake of the food that you offer. Even though they are in some commentaries, it's actually mentioned that these hungry ghosts, their mouths are actually very thin, like a mosquito. They're able only to suck the essence out of the food, but they're still able to actually partake of the essence of the food that you offer. So the Buddha says, if one is reborn as a hungry ghost, yes, then the Buddha will call that is a right occasion. That's where if you offer food to this hungry ghosts, this petas, in Pali petas, then they will be able to partake of this food and benefit from the food offering. However, I think it's called the right occasion. However, the Buddha says if one is actually reborn as an animal, or as in the hell, in hells, and if one is actually reborn as a human being or as a devas, the Buddha says that these are the wrong occasions, because they are already reborn in another realm and they are not actually near the human realm. So they're not even aware that you have actually offered food to them, So the Buddha calls these occasions as wrong occasions. For example, if one, does not perform any of the 10 unwholesome actions, and he actually abstains from the 10 unwholesome actions, so at the breakout of the body, he becomes a deva, or he becomes a human being, or if somebody is reborn as an animal, he's already reborn as an animal somewhere, or he actually gets reborn as in any of the hells, So if they are reborn in these realms, they are not even aware that you have made food offering. So the Buddha calls that these are the wrong occasions. Even if you make food offering to them, they are not able to benefit, at all. So the Buddha actually says that this is the right occasion and wrong occasion. So I'm just summarizing this sutta for you. You can refer to this AN 10.177. So this 𝓿𝙗𝙖𝙢𝙖𝙢𝙖, he's actually a very smart Brahmin. He actually asked the Buddha, let me show you. Okay, he says, okay, since the Buddha says that, if one is reborn as a hungry ghost, one is able to benefit from the food offering. So this Brahmin actually asked the Buddha, he said, Master Gautama, but who partakes of this gift that if that deceased relative or family member has not been reborn in that place? What happens if any of my relatives are not reborn in the Peta realm, So which means wouldn't my offering be actually of no fruit? It's actually useless, right? If I actually make a food offering, but my relatives are all reborn as devas, as human beings, but none of them are reborn as a Peta, So wouldn't my offering be actually of is in vain? It's actually it's actually of no benefit at all. It's actually useless. That they actually just make this offering if none of my family members are actually reborn as Petas. Then the Buddha says, you know what? The Buddha actually responds by saying, over this long stretch of time, in samsara Brahmin, it is impossible and inconceivable for that place to be devoid of one's departed relatives or family members. You know, here the Buddha says that over this long course of samsara, it's impossible for none of your relatives to be reborn into this Peta realm. It doesn't mean it's only this current in this current life, the relatives in your current life. How about the relatives in your previous lives, the inconceivable lives in samsara? They have been, some of them may have been reborn, in the Peta realm, and they're stuck in that realm for aeons, for the longest time, and they're not able to get out from Peta realm into the human realm. So there are also such Petas there, whom can actually benefit if you actually make that food offering. So this Brahmin actually he doesn't quite believe that his family members can be reborn in the Peta realm. So in the end, you know what he asked the Buddha? He says, does Master Gautama posit the value of giving even on the wrong occasion? Look at this paragraph here. He says, does Master Gautama posit even the value of giving even on wrong occasion? Which means what he's asking the Buddha is, so even if none of my relatives are reborn as a Peta, he doesn't believe his relatives will be born there. What if I make offering and my relatives are born as a deva, as a human, as in the or maybe not in the hell, or as an animal? So if they are reborn in the wrong occasion, and if I make an offering, so doesn't that mean that my offering is of no value at all? He's actually very concerned about his offering bringing value, bringing benefits and bringing the merits to him. He's very concerned about merits of him giving. So even if it's a wrong occasion, will I still get the benefit or not if it's a wrong occasion? If none of my relatives are reborn as Petas? So the Buddha actually answers him. So this is the meat of the sutta, which is actually pertains to my the topic today. So the Buddha says, okay, so here there's someone who actually does not observe his sila, and he actually performs the 10 unwholesome actions, which means he actually performs, like for example, killing, stealing, sensual misconduct, and then the 4 unwholesome speech, and also in terms of mind, he actually holds three unwholesome mental actions. And because of that, his sila is actually, he actually breaks his morality. But despite him breaking the morality, he actually gives the ascetic and Brahmin a lot of food and drinks, clothing, vehicle, garland, scents, and bedding, and dwelling and lighting, So the Buddha is actually giving an example that, okay, this person doesn't actually observe his sila, and because of that, he's actually reborn in the lower realm, in the hell, and as an animal. But because he actually performs a lot of this dana, by actually doing a lot of charity and being generous, support the monks, support, whoever who is in need, he's very generous. He gives a lot of charity, So the Buddha says with the breakup of the body after death, he's reborn in a companion with elephants, and there he actually enjoys the luxury of life, by actually getting food and drinks, and garlands from his master, So and the Buddha says again here, that here the Buddha says not just elephants, so he actually may be reborn as a royal horse, as a royal cattle, maybe as a pet dog, as a pet cat, So the Buddha is actually highlighting here that, that um, when someone, if he doesn't observe his sila and morality, but he actually gives a lot of charity, just like what the topic of my Dhamma to talk today, he does not observe his sila, but he gives a lot of charity, So what will happen is the Buddha says each karma will actually produce its own result, each has its own track. It doesn't mean that you offset your bad karma, of not observing sila, you can offset it, by doing a lot of charity, both will actually go hand in hand, they'll produce their respective and corresponding results. So if you don't observe your sila, you perform the 10 awesome actions, you actually end up, as a dog or a cat or a horse or elephant, maybe as in the royal, maybe in the palace, and you actually enjoy a lot of this luxurious food, and you get a lot of this care, tender loving care, but you are actually, reborn as animals. Because you don't observe your sila, you are actually reborn as animal. But because of your dana, you actually enjoy a lot of these luxuries. So the Buddha in this sutta, the Buddha is actually highlighting, he's actually telling this Janu Soni, that even if you actually perform this unwholesome, so if you perform charity, even if you perform charity and it is actually on the wrong occasion, the benefits of your giving the charity will still bear results. That's what the Buddha is trying to actually tell this Janu Soni, and he gives this example of someone who actually gives a lot of charity, but he does not does not observe his morality, and he actually performs the 10 awesome actions. So because of that, each will actually perform, which each will actually produce its corresponding results. So that's why we in this sutta, we can actually see very clearly that you cannot actually offset the bad karma, of not observing a sila, and by performing by performing this dana, so each action will actually produce its corresponding results. So this is the first sutta that I'd like to share with you. In terms of that you cannot actually offset, the lack of sila, by performing dana. So you cannot offset, because each of this type of karma, it will actually produce its corresponding results. So just now I actually highlighted to you the situation where one lacks sila but perform a lot of dana. Next, I want to actually highlight to you a situation where one actually observe his sila but does not perform dana. So what will actually happen? Will actually the performing of dana, will actually the observing of your sila itself will actually offset the bad results of not performing dana. So that's the next question I need to also address, in this talk. So for this for this question, let me refer you to this sutta, Anguttara Nikaya 5.31, where there is this conversation that actually took place between Princess Sumana and also the Buddha, and this was actually happened in Savatthi, in another Pindika's park. So here, Princess Sumana actually asked the Buddha this question. She says, Bhante, there might be two disciples of the Blessed One, and both of these are equal in faith, in virtuous behavior and wisdom, So the Princess Sumana actually asked the Buddha, what if someone actually observe, his sila, but one is actually generous and the other one is not. So she actually wants to find out, whether there will be any difference in actually between these two, if one actually is observe the sila very well, but does not actually perform dana. So the question now is, will actually will the observing of the sila itself compensate, for the lack of dana? So that's the question, right, to be answered. So the Buddha in this sutta actually says, the one who actually is generous, when he becomes a deva or as a human being, he will actually enjoy, he will surpass the one who does not perform dana in 5 ways in terms of lifespan, in terms of the beauty, in terms of happiness, in terms of glory, and in terms of celestial authority. So the Buddha is saying that if one actually observe his sila very well, but he does not actually perform dana, he's actually very miserly, and does not actually want to perform a lot of charity, but he performs his sila very well. So the question now is, does the performing the wholesome karma of observing the karma, will it actually offset the unwholesome karma of not performing dana? So from this sutta we can actually it's another piece of evidence that supports us that supports the understanding that essentially even if you actually observe your sila very well, but if you actually do not if you do not actually perform dana, it will not, this sila, the benefit from sila, the wholesome karma will not actually offset the lack of dana. So if you actually don't perform dana, because you have actually observed your sila well, you actually become a human being, or as a deva, in any of the celestial realms, you become a deva, but because you actually don't observe your, you don't perform dana well enough, because of that, you actually you are more you are actually more inferior as compared to the one who performs dana in terms of the beauty, in terms of lifespan. Maybe as a deva, your light is actually less luminous, you shine less, maybe you live shorter, you have a shorter life, as a deva. Maybe your influence and authority over the deva realm is also not as big or as influential as compared to the deva, that has actually performed dana. So you can see from this sutta again, it's actually very interesting how you piece together this sutta, by looking at 10.177 and 5.31, that essentially the two do not actually compensate each other. In 10.177, you have a situation where one does not actually observe the sila well, but he does a lot of dana. Because of that, because he actually, because of his lack of sila, he actually is reborn as an animal. But he enjoys all the luxuries of life. He actually gets a good master, or maybe he's reborn in the palace. He gets all the tender loving care, all the food, all the luxuries of life. So that is one situation. And then the second situation in this 5.31, where Princess Umana asked that question, if one actually observe the sila very well, he's actually very assiduous and impeccable in the sila, but he does not perform dana. He said, oh, I don't want to do dana. I don't want to do. He doesn't perform charity. So in this situation again, because his sila is very impeccable, he guards the sila very well. He's reborn as a deva, as a human, but because of a lack of dana, he's actually is inferior, compared to the one who does who does dana. So he is actually inferior in terms of beauty, in terms of lifespan, in terms of influence, in terms of in terms of glory and authority. So we can see from these two sutta, that whether you lack in sila or whether you lack in dana, it is not compensated by the other by the other one that you do well. So each type of unwholesome karma or wholesome karma will produce its corresponding results. There's actually no mixing around of karma where you can say, oh, I can compensate this, but if I break my precepts, I compensate this. Or if I don't do my dana, maybe by being observing my precepts well, I'm able to compensate, by not actually performing dana. So from here we can see that it will not be compensated. Each will actually runs its own corresponding course and will produce its own corresponding results. So we have to be very, very careful and make sure that we perform dana and sila, equally well, and not actually and not because and not be lack in either of these important aspects of spiritual life. And next, I also want to actually share with you to another sutta which also further supports this importance, of observing both well, and also how, there's no offsetting, of good karma against the bad karma. So I just want to highlight to you again this sutta, also from the book Anguttara Nikaya, and this actually is actually from the book of 4, and this is actually sutta number 235. I just want to share with you. The Buddha talks about 4 types of karma. And the Buddha actually talks about these 4 types of karma, and he actually tells the bhikkhus, what are these 4 types? You have this dark karma with dark result, which means if you actually perform unwholesome actions, you will you'll get unwholesome results. And what is the bright karma with bright results? So we all know, if you perform wholesome karma, will produce wholesome results. Here, I just want to highlight to you this very interesting part where the Buddha actually says, and what is dark and bright karma and with dark and bright result, So this is actually champo, it's actually mixed together. You have a dark and bright karma with dark and bright result. Let me give an example. For example, perhaps maybe your child is sleeping, and you see a mosquito on the child's hand, and then you say, oh, better, I don't want my child to be to suffer because of dengue or whatnot. So I just quickly slap the mosquito, and the mosquito dies. So in this case, there's this dark and bright karma. The dark karma is that you have actually killed the mosquito, but the bright karma is that you actually have this compassion and this metta for the child, right? Because you want to protect the child, from getting infected with disease. So the Buddha says, in this case, you actually have got a mixture, a dark and bright karma together, And the Buddha says, will this good karma of having compassion and metta, will it actually offset against this bad karma of killing mosquito or not? So you know what the Buddha says? The Buddha says, as a consequence, and we read this paragraph, here someone performs a bodily volition action that's afflictive and non-afflictive, just like what I mentioned here, hitting the mosquito, right? And as a consequence, he's reborn in a world that's both afflictive and non-afflictive. When he's reborn in such a world, contexts that are both afflictive and non-afflictive touch him. So what the Buddha is saying that each type of karma will produce its own results. So because of your metta for the child, and compassion, yes, you actually get wholesome results. You actually get a lot of happiness, because of the good karma, of metta and karuna. But because you have killed the mosquito, this bad karma itself will produce its dark result as well. You actually somehow suffer because of that. By some reason, maybe you suffer physically and mentally because of hitting the mosquito. So the Buddha says, this bright and this dark karma will not be compensated by the bright karma. Unfortunately, both will run its course. So we have to be very careful here. So it does not mean that you perform a lot of good dana or good merits means they will actually compensate for the bad result. It doesn't work like math where you have -5 + 3, is -2. It doesn't work that way. So each will actually run its own course, because of volition. Karma is actually volition, and once you actually had a volition in mind, the corresponding result will happen. It is actually something very potent. Is the energy in your mind. Once you have willed and made that volition in your mind, and once you perform it, the vipaka will actually ensue. It will happen. It doesn't matter whether it's now in this life or in the subsequent lives. It will bear its course. So we have to be very careful here. That there is actually no compensating in terms of unwholesome karma here. And of course, in this next sutta here, of course, the Buddha talks about neither bright nor dark karma. This one I'll come to this later, okay? But here for now, I just want to highlight to you that that there is actually no offsetting, not like math. In karma there's no offsetting in at all. Okay, so the question now is then the question here is, you see there's no offsetting, right? Between bad and good karma, wholesome, unwholesome karma. But I've often heard Dhamma speakers, give Dhamma talks that, oh, you must do a lot of dana, do a lot of dana, do a lot of good merits, so that you create a well of a whole well of water, and also like Ganges River, such a huge and humongous river, right? You create such a well or river such that whatever bad karma you have, once you drop it into the water, you actually be diluted and all your bad karma will dissipate. So wouldn't that be inconsistent with this sutta in terms of the lump of salt? Actually, that's why I want to share with you this sutta again. It's actually extracted from this book of 𝓲𝓘. If you want to refer to it, it's book of 𝓲𝓘, Anguttara Nikaya, book of 𝓲𝓘, Sutta 100, 3.100. Quite easy to remember, right? 3.100. This sutta is actually called a lump of salt. The Buddha in this sutta, right, he explains to the bhikkhus, the monks, what he means by putting a lump of salt, into a glass of water and also the Ganges river, the difference between the two. Actually, in this sutta, the Buddha actually highlights the differences of two persons, who has actually performed bad karma. Here the Buddha says, someone has actually created some trifling bad karma. You look at this second paragraph here. He says some person has created some trifling bad karma, yet it leads him to hell. While some other person, you just look at my cursor here, while some other person here has created exactly the same trifling karma, yet it is to be experienced in this very life, without even a single residue being seen, much less abundant. So the Buddha is actually saying that these two persons, and these two have actually done the same trifling bad karma. The Buddha says trifling bad karma is not really the weighty karma, trifling bad karma, but the effect of this trifling bad karma is actually different from from these two persons. One goes to hell, whereas the other one would just experience it just as a just slight residue only. He just experience it not very seriously, perhaps just as a slight discomfort, a slight residue, and after that it just goes off, because of that, So the question here is, why is it that somebody, two persons, they have actually done the same amount of trifling bad karma, but one leads him to hell, but the other one does not even, it does not even cause him any much discomfort, just some residue, and maybe in their very life the residue just dissipates, just disappears, So the Buddha says, why is it like that, So the Buddha explains in this sutta, it's just very amazing what the Buddha, is so able to explain in such clear terms. The Buddha says, what kind of person creates exactly the same trifling, and to be experienced in this life, and without even a slight residue being seen? What is so different about him compared to the one who has actually reborn in the hell? The Buddha says that this person is different. Why is he different? Because he is developed in here. Bhikkhu Bodhi has actually used the word body, but if you actually look at the Pali text, this body is actually kaya. Kaya actually in some context, it actually means the mind. So in this case, actually it should be developed in mind. The Buddha is saying that if you develop, if you're well cultivated in your mind, you have very virtuous behavior, and you have actually insights and wisdom. This is how your bad karma can actually be diluted. It's not by performing a lot of good merits, but it is because you actually cultivate your mind. You watch your mind. You actually develop insights and wisdom in your mind, and because of that, whatever bad karma that you have actually developed or cultivated, this bad karma actually is diluted and dissipated. As compared to someone compared to someone, you look at the paragraph before this, he does a trifling bad karma, but he goes to hell. Why? Because this person is undeveloped in mind. He doesn't have sila, he doesn't develop his mind, and he doesn't have wisdom. Because of that, because of his spiritual development is not there, because of this trifling bad karma, he goes, it leads him to hell. So the Buddha says, see, suppose a man were to drop, this lump of salt into a small bowl of water. What do you think, bhikkhus? Would the lump of salt actually, how would that actually make the water salty and undrinkable? Yes, Bhante, he says, for what reason? Because the water in the bowl is so limited, that's why it becomes so salty that it's undrinkable. But suppose, you actually drop this lump of salt into a river of Ganges. What do you think? This lump of salt is actually nothing, right, compared to river Ganges. It's so huge, so such humongous river, right? This salt is nothing, right? So the Buddha says that's exactly the same, why the reason why I said that if somebody is actually developed in mind, he has got wisdom, he has got insights, because of that, the whatever trifling bad karma he has, it actually just disappears, and the effect, is just so trifling, it's actually not, doesn't cause him any suffering at all. As compared to someone, he does the same amount of bad karma, trifling bad karma, because he is actually undeveloped in mind, and he's not well cultivated. Because of that, it leads him to hell. So we have to be very careful here. The Buddha in this lump of salt is not talking about creating a lot of dana, doing a lot of merits, and because of that, it actually dilutes your bad karma of breaking of precepts, right? The Buddha is saying that this lump of salt, this water, this glass of water, and this river Ganges, it is actually referring to the spiritual development of someone who has cultivated his mind, through knowing and seeing, the intrinsic nature, of all conditioned phenomena or all sankharas. That's what the Buddha actually says about this lump of salt. It's not about it is actually not about creating a lot of dana to compensate your lack of sila, but it's actually to cultivate yourself, such that, you develop your mind, you have wisdom and insights. That is what the Buddha means by river Ganges. It is not about, creating a lot of good dana, So we have to be very careful of this. And next, I just want to show you this Pali Sutta of this AN 3.100. If you look at this fourth paragraph, undeveloped in mind is actually what we call abavi takayo, abavi takayo. So this kayo, look at the last part here. Kayo is what we call kaya, and because kaya is actually, it actually means body, in many parts of the sutta, kaya does mean body, but in some contexts, kaya actually means the mind. So, it's like self, it's like self, but it refers to the mind. So how you actually watch your mind, how you actually aware, and you watch your mind constantly, and you actually observe, and contemplate all the defilements that arise in you in terms of non-self, So that is the thing, that actually develops your mind. So the Buddha says that if you're undeveloped in your mind, so if you actually do some slight bad karma, then it will lead you to hell, because you are undeveloped in your mind. You have no wisdom, you're not spiritually advanced, So the Buddha is emphasizing a lot on what? A lot on spiritual development, on meditation, on the mental development. It's not about creating a lot of dana, doing a lot of charity to compensate, for your unwholesome actions. In fact, the Buddha says that if you want to reduce the effect of your unwholesome actions, you must meditate, you must actually develop your mind, watch your mind at all times. So by doing that, then you actually be able to reduce your bad karma. It's like reducing your borrowings, your debts, because you have brought along a lot of debts, in samsara, right? If you want to reduce your debts, it's not by doing a lot of charity, but you need to develop your mind, so that, as you advance spiritually, then you are able to slowly, unshackle yourself from samsara, and you'll be able to get out of samsara, once and for all. That's what the Buddha says. That's the only way to reduce your bad karma, to reduce your debt. And at the same time, you must also not create new debts, right? Not by creating a lot of bad karma, So you see, the importance of developing our mind, to reduce the effect of this bad karma. I just want to share with you again this very interesting sutta of this extracted from this Majjhima Nikaya, the Middle Discourses 86. It's actually called with 𝑘𝑢𝑙𝑖𝑚ālā. I'm sure all of you have actually read in so many books, and also I'm sure Sunday Dhamma school has always been teaching about 𝑘𝑢𝑙𝑖𝑚ālā, right? About how 𝑘𝑢𝑙𝑖𝑚ālā was actually transformed from being a serial killer into into a monk, into a bhikkhu, and has attained arahantship, under the Buddha's guidance. So again, this Majjhima Nikaya in the sutta, it actually records during this time of King Pasenadi of the Kosala kingdom, there was this. Look at my cursor here. There was this bandit named 𝑘𝑢𝑙𝑖𝑚ālā. He was violent, bloody-handed, a hardened killer, merciless to living beings. He actually constantly murdering people, and he wore fingers as a necklace, as a garland. So there was one day the Buddha actually roped up in the morning and taking his bowl, and he entered Savatthi, and after he has finished his alms round, he actually decided to actually he walked down the road and he wanted to actually look for Angulimala. So I suspect the Buddha, through his trance of compassion, he actually saw this Angulimala, as actually somebody with potential to become an arahant. So the Buddha actually took the bow, and walked down to and headed towards the direction to look for Angulimala. So all the cowherds and all the travelers and farmers saw the Buddha and told the Buddha, Master Gautama, don't take this road, ascetic, this road, there's a bandit called Angulimala. He's violent, bloody-handed, and a hardened killer and merciless to living beings. He has actually killed countless people, and he actually wore fingers as garland. And he says that he killed people. People travel in groups of 10, 20, 30, 50. Still, they meet their end by Angulimala's hand. So please don't go to this. Don't take this road, this ascetic, please take another road now. So, but the Buddha just kept silent, because the Buddha knew exactly what he wanted to do. So the second time and third time, they urged the Buddha to turn back, but the Buddha just went on in silence. And then when this Angulimala saw the Buddha coming in the distance, right, they said, wow, it's amazing. People travel in groups on this road. Most of them, because they're scared, they travel in groups of 10, 50, 30, 50. Wow, this man, was so fearless. He just traveled by himself. So let me, this one should be a very easy piece of cake. He said, let me just go over there and just take his life. Why don't I just take his life? Then this Angulimala took his sword and shield, and his arrows, and he wanted to chase the Buddha, to kill the Buddha. The Buddha used his psychic power to will the Angulimala could not catch up with him, no matter how he tried. He just kept on running and running, but he just couldn't catch up with the Buddha, Then the Buddha thought, this Angulimala thought, it's amazing, how I've chased a speeding elephant and horse and chariot and deer. I always caught up with them, but this ascetic, no matter how hard I try, I'm still not able to catch up with him, as though I'm walking at a normal speed. So he just couldn't stand anymore. He just shouted at the Buddha. He says, stop, ascetic, stop, Then this Buddha says, I have stopped, Angulimala, now you stop, Then Angulimala said, why is this ascetic actually asking me to stop, um, why don't I ask him this? It's rather puzzling, right? He's asking me to stop, that he has stopped, that he has stopped and asking me to stop, you see. So then, of course, the Buddha actually gave him this discourse, that you have to stop killing living creatures. I have stopped. I'm an arahant. I'm the Buddha. I've actually stopped killing all living creatures, but you have not. And you have actually continued to harm and kill living creatures, and and because of that, now you actually, you actually. You actually be reborn in the woeful plains if you don't stop, in time, So because of this, the Buddha, this Angulimala was so moved by the Buddha's words. He threw all his weapons, and swords into the abyss. Look at this, and he actually venerated at the Buddha's feet, and then asked for asked to become, to enter the holy life, And after he became a monk, right, then of course this sutta went on by saying this king personally, went to see the Buddha in this in this another Pindika's monastery, because he wanted to actually catch this murderer, because all the villagers, the people were all making an uproar because of this murderer, and so this king actually had to do something, and he felt very scared because of this murderer, this Angulimala, Then of course the sutta went on by saying that the Buddha then told this king that Angulimala was actually one of the monks now, and he was here, and how then this king personally actually then paid respect to this Angulimala, and Angulimala became a monk, and and because of that, then this Angulimala, then practice, under the Buddha. of course, this is a very, very long sutta. You can actually refer to it. Then, of course, this sutta also talks about this Angulimala as a monk. He saw a woman who was actually giving birth to a baby and was having a very difficult birth. And because of that, the Buddha actually asked this Angulimala to recite, this gatha, and because of that, the birth of this baby became safe. So it's a very famous gatha, that's actually being recited. And it's also all recorded in this Majjhima Nikaya. It's all recorded in this Pali Sutta. And I just want to highlight to you this. Actually, what I'm trying to say here is okay, look at this paragraph here. Okay, this in the middle, look at my cursor. Then Angulimala, living alone, withdrawn, diligent, keen, resolute, he soon realized the spiritual path in this very life. He had lived achieving, with his own insight, the goal of which a noble man go forth and, from lay life to homelessness. He says here, my rebirth is ended, my spiritual journey has been completed. And Venerable Angulimala became one of the perfected, one of the Arahants. So this Majjhima Nikaya, we see Angulimala actually had become an Arahant. But despite of this, in spite of him being an Arahant, you know what happened? Whenever Angulimala actually rolled up in the morning and went for took his bow and went for arms, he often got hurt, and injured, because people would throw stone at him, people would actually throw stick, and gravel at him. Because of that, he actually was bleeding from his head, and his head was actually cracked and bleeding, and his bow was broken, his outer robe was torn, because people still had hatred towards Angulimalas, so, and they actually injured him. So when the Buddha actually saw him in such a state, the Buddha says, endure it, Brahmin, endure it. You are experiencing in this life the result of deeds that might have caused you to be tormented in hell for many, many years, many hundreds and thousands of years. So what the Buddha is saying here, that if Angulimala had not become an Arahant, he would have actually been reborn in the hell and be tortured, for all the killings that he had done. But because he had actually become an Arahant, so he only had to endure, bleeding on the skull, and perhaps some injuries on the body, So what we can see from this sutta is the lump of salt is actually very true, right? Because this Angulimala had actually become, he has created this wealth of water, like Ganges River, because he had become an Arahant. He has actually cultivated himself such that he has developed insights and wisdom. Because of that, the lump of salt, because of his killing, actually is diluted because he has become an Arahant, not because he has actually performed a lot of dana. So in this case, we can see again, this another piece of evidence from Sutta that the only way to actually dilute your bad karma, is actually by creating, by actually developing and cultivating wisdom, and cultivating wisdom and insight. So that is the only way to dilute, your bad karma. It's not to compensate by doing a lot of charity. So, but the question now is, how do we actually then develop, cultivate our minds such that we are able to reduce the bad effects of unwholesome karma? How do we develop insights and wisdom? So the Buddha says the only way that we can actually develop wisdom is actually for us to actually uproot ignorance, because ignorance is actually is something that has actually caused us to actually roam around in samsara for the longest time. Look at what the Buddha in this sutta, Itivuttaka number 14, actually says. This was actually said by the Blessed One. He says, Bhikkhus, I do not perceive any single hindrance other than the hindrance of ignorance by which humankind is so obstructed for such a long time, and runs on and wanders in samsara. It's because of this ignorance that's actually sort of like shrouded us in darkness, that no, we do not see the real nature of existence and conditioned phenomena. That's why we are actually shrouded in darkness. We are actually being covered by a thick piece of cloth, that everything is so dark because of this ignorance. And the Buddha again, You see what the Buddha actually highlights here. The Buddha actually highlights here. Okay. Let me see. I'm trying to see this sutta here. Yeah, the Buddha actually highlights in this sutta SN 22.99. This sutta is actually called the leash. The Buddha says we are actually just like a dog, you know. We are just like a dog, you know. We are actually tied by this leash that is actually tied to a very strong pose, and we keep on running and running and running and running around, you know, like in samsara, you know. Just like this uninstructed run-of-the-mill person, we know we do not see the intrinsic truth in human in existence, as well as, you know, in conditioned phenomena. So that's why we've been in samsara for the longest time. You know? So much so that, you know, we actually do not so much so that, you know, we are actually shrouded in this samsara, you know, for such a longest time. So that's why the Buddha says, in order for us to actually reduce this bad effects of karma, and also for us to not to create any more karma, it is actually for us to very important for us to actually uproot this ignorance, to actually uproot this ignorance. And why is it this ignorance is so important for us to actually eradicate and uproot? In this Sutta SN 12.35, the Buddha says, bhikkhus, with ignorance as a condition, volitional formations come to be. It's because of ignorance, that's why there's actually volition, right? And volition we know is karma. So karma is actually created, you know, by ignorance. You know? So if you don't actually uproot this ignorance, you know, you are creating more and more karma, right? And more, you are actually you are actually trapped, you know, in samsara, because you keep on incurring more and more debts, you know. And what is the culprit, you know? And the culprit is actually ignorance. So that's why we need to actually be very mindful, you know, and actually take heed of what the actually Buddha says. This ignorance, you know, this avijja, you know, what in Pali is called avijja, you know, it is actually something that has actually caused us so much of misery, you know, because of this ignorance itself. And what is this this ignorance? You see, what is how do we actually uproot this ignorance? You know, so the Buddha says, in order for us to uproot this ignorance, it is actually very important for us to actually see the non-self nature. The non-self nature is actually very, very important for us to actually uproot. You know, this ignorance. Let me just show you this this sutta again. You see here, this dog, like I mentioned to you just now, this dog itself, he has actually been running around and around this strong pose, and here the Buddha says there will come a time where the great ocean will all dry up, and then the king of mountains Sumeru will actually burn in flame, you know, and one fine day when the end of the world happens, this great earth will be consumed, you know, in flames. Everything will be destroyed, you know. But the Buddha says, as long as you are hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving, you know, you will still be in samsara. You know, even though the whole world may just burn. You know, you will still be suffering in maybe another world system. You still be in suffering. You know, you still be wandering in samsara. You know, in one of the maybe in another world system. So the Buddha says you're just like a dog running around and around, you know, like a pose, you know, in samsara. You know, and why is this? You know, the Buddha says because because of ignorance, you know, we are actually shrouded by the ignorance. We actually have this wrong view that our five aggregates there's actually self to it. You know, we actually assume everything to be permanent. We actually assume that the body, the feelings, you know, the perception, you know, the volitional formations and consciousness, everything are actually self. So the Buddha says the culprit, you know, in why we do not actually are not able to actually escape from samsara, we are forever, in samsara, is because we do not see the Four Noble Truths. And because of that, we actually see the five aggregates, as self. There's a permanent, unchanging self to it. Because of that, you cling to it, right? For example, you have a nice feeling, when you see something pleasant, you see you hear music, nice music, when you eat food, very nice, delicious food, and when you are in good company, with your friends, you feel very happy, because of this, you actually hold the view there's actually a self to all this. You want this nice feeling and the happiness to actually be persist, to have a permanent self, and not actually go away. And because of that, you keep on clinging and clinging, because of what? Because of this ignorance. Because of ignorance of a self, you keep on craving. And because of craving, you actually cling to it, you actually grasp, at this nice feeling. And because of that, rebirth happens. This karma, it's like a it's like a fuel, it's like a petrol fuel that actually will propel you to be reborn again, to find another nama rupa for your consciousness to reside again, for this rebirth to keep on for yourself to perpetuate. Because of what? Because of this ignorance, you keep on thinking, I want this nice feeling to continue, to be permanent, to be there forever. I don't want it to go away. I want to seek, continue seeking this nice feeling. I want to actually enjoy all these sensual pleasures I have, whether in the Deva realm or human realm. I want to continue to enjoy this, So that's why the Buddha says because of this ignorance, we continue to have this urge, this energy, this karma, and because of that, we keep on creating a lot of this karma, and we actually perpetuate ourselves in samsara, and of course, because of this ignorance, all the bad effects that we have, from the bad karma we've done also cannot be diluted, so that's why the Buddha actually tell us, we should actually prepare ourselves, before the final ending comes. We have to prepare ourselves. How do you prepare ourselves? You have to make sure you try to gradually reduce and uproot this ignorance slowly and gradually, because Dhamma is something very gradual and slow, something very gradual, So every day, the Buddha says, establish your mindfulness, your sati, in your six sense doors, whether whatever you see, whatever you smell, whatever you taste, whatever you touch, and whatever you think, So whatever it is, these six sense doors, you must always have this six sense basis. You must always have your sati established in them, and very importantly, watch your mind. The Buddha says, whenever there's any lobha, dosa, moha, greed, anger, and delusion that arises in your mind, you have to practice satipatthana, by actually this citta nupassana is very important. You must know that this greed, hatred, delusion has arisen in your mind, and you must actually then contemplate how this greed, hatred, and delusion has arisen through causes and conditions, by looking at, for example, you get angry or upset because someone actually talks bad about you, then okay, anger has arisen, but why does this anger arise? Oh, it's because of unpleasant feeling, and why does this unpleasant feeling arise? Oh, it's actually because of this thought in me, I actually have this thought now that why does he have to actually say such bad things about me, and then why does this thought arise? Oh, it's because of perception. Why does this perception arise? Perception, someone is actually slandering about you, and talking something unpleasant about you, This perception is arisen. And why does a perception happen? Oh, it's because of contact. And why does the contact happen? Oh, it's because of ear consciousness. And why does ear consciousness happen? Oh, it's because of the ear and the sound. So from this contemplation, you'll be able to see this anger is actually something that is actually dependent, is fabricated, it's dependently arisen through causes and conditions. It's just like a banana tree trunk, you actually see a banana tree trunk, but if you actually peel off the banana tree trunk one by one, actually there's nothing inside, it's just emptiness inside, but it's actually made up by layers and layers of banana sheets. That's why you're able to get a banana tree trunk. But when you peel open the banana tree trunk, it's actually nothing. So very much the same as what the Buddha actually teaches us, if you are angry, do not actually focus on this anger as something permanent. And because of this, you get very agitated, and you react by scolding back, or doing something, that's unpleasant and that's harsh, right? And then because you create more karma and bad karma, but you have to contemplate it in terms of this, how this anger has arisen through causes and conditions, and because of that, it's actually empty. What the Buddha says, sunyata, is empty. There's actually nothing to it. So because of that, you actually are able to slowly let go of this anger and slowly let go of all these defilements, and that's how you uproot the defilements. So that's what the Buddha says is very important. And of course, I also given you this Majjhima Nikaya 148, which I actually have explained to you just now in terms of 6 sets of 6. Basically, what the Buddha is saying, that you must establish your sati in the 6 sense doors, 6 sets of 6. And once the 6 sense doors established, you look at the 6 things that happen, when you contemplate in terms of your craving, in terms of your perception, your thought, and also your sense bases, how they actually come together, through causes and conditions. That's how, this your greed, anger, and delusion actually happens. So as you can see, there's actually nothing permanent. There's actually nothing to it. The whole this anger or greed is actually emptiness. We've actually been tricked into believing that there's actually permanent to it. Just like we're being tricked by a magician, right? But actually there's nothing to it. It's just empty. But we just hold this view there's a self. Because of that, we keep on, transmigrating in this samsara, which for so long, and we do not see the Four Noble Truths. So the Buddha actually asks us to practice by looking at these 6 sets of 6 in this MN 148, and also in MN 146, the Buddha also talks about this Venerable Nandaka. He actually gave also this talk to the bhikkhunis. So this Venerable Nandaka actually gave a very good example of this flame. If you actually light a flame, right, on an oil lamp, you see that there's a flame and light, right? But the thing here is that is this flame is it actually, can it exist by itself or not without any causes and conditions? Can the flame exist by itself? If you say that the flame if you say that the flame has a self, means that the flame can exist there without any causes and conditions. That means it does not depend on oil, it does not depend on air, it does not depend on the oil wick. So can you say that the flame is just there without causes and conditions? No, it's just impossible, right? The flame is there because it's dependent on the wick, as well as the oil lamp, as well as the oil lamp, as well as the wick, as well as air. Because of that, the flame is able to burn and be luminous. So it's all dependently a reason. It's not because the flame has a self, and it's just there by itself. No, but because it's non-self, it's dependently a reason. And because of that, if any of the conditions that cause this to arise actually change or disappear, this flame also will disappear, right? So it's empty. For example, if the oil actually is actually finished, or your oil wick is actually exhausted, or if there's no air, so immediately this flame, is actually extinguished. So if you say that this flame actually has a self, this light, this fire, this flame actually has a self, then it will be something quite ridiculous. You cannot, how can you then say that this flame has a self? So this flame, this oil, this light is actually non-self, because it's depending a reason, So this then this Venerable Nandaka also talk about the shadow. Shadow is formed because of the sunlight, and also the tree trunk. But if the sun is being actually hidden by the clouds, or the tree is actually is removed, then this shadow also disappears. So this shadow is also dependently a reason. There's nothing substantive to it. So the Buddha actually says, in order for us to actually uproot this ignorance, so that we can develop spiritually, so that we can try to reduce the bad effect of all the bad karma we have actually created in the previous in our past lives, inconceivable samsara. It is not it doesn't work by you just performing a lot of good dana and charity, but the Buddha says just a lump of salt in the sutta, you actually have to actually cultivate your wisdom, and your insights by eradicating ignorance. And the Buddha has actually given a very, very clear way of practicing through the suttas, the Pali canon in the suttas. The Buddha has actually given us very, very good instructions in terms of how we can develop the knowing and seeing of non-self, and how do we do that? The Buddha says just by watching your mind. Watching your mind is actually something very simple, but it's also not that simple, right? Because most of the time we are so unmindful. But if you are able to watch your mind, consistently, whenever you feel angry, greedy, whenever you see delusion, whenever you see that, oh, I'm actually being attached to self, whenever you see this greed, hatred, delusion, or loba, dosa, moha arising in you, and greed doesn't mean just intense greed. For example, I like this, I don't like that. I like him, I don't like her, or I like this, I don't like that. Even by liking itself is really greed, it's actually loba already, And dosa also, it doesn't mean hatred, Sometimes dislike also is actually dosa. I dislike this type of food, I dislike him, I dislike the way he behaves. Dislike also is another also loba, So you have to actually watch your mind, just like what the Buddha says in S1035.152. Is there a criterion? The Buddha says, this Ati Nuko Pariyayo Sutta, the Buddha says just by watching your mind alone, you can actually become an arahant. Just like here you see, look at my cursor here. In this a monk seeing an object with eye recognizes within himself the presence of lust, hatred, or delusion, knowing lust, hatred, and delusion is present in me. Or he recognizes the absence of these things, knowing that there's no lust, hatred, or delusion present in me. So if you're able to just see this, the Buddha says that you're actually able to actually attain all the way to arahantship. You see here, apart from here, to say, could affirm the attainment of enlightenment. A birth is destroyed, the holy life has been accomplished. So the Buddha says watching your mind is actually practicing Citta Nupassana, Satipatthana Sutta, right? How these suttas are all interweaved together so beautifully. That's why the Buddha says this Dhamma is beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, beautiful in the end. Everything seems to actually fall into pieces like a jigsaw puzzle. Everything is so consistently wonderful. The Buddha, in all the suttas, all the teachings are so consistently interwoven. You cannot find a teaching where one actually contradicts the other, unless it's due to some subsequent variations are done by the authors. But other than that, if it's actually pure Pali Suttas, right, everything is flows so smoothly and so beautifully. As well, you can see the Buddha actually highlights again and again, you must make sure you develop your mind, so that this lump of salt is actually being placed in Ganges River and not in a glass of water. And that is actually referring to you cultivating your wisdom and also to develop your mind, develop your mind by uprooting ignorance. So knowing this, we must actually take heed of what the Buddha says. We must continue to practice Dana, Sila, Bhavana, but don't just rest contented with just doing Dana and Sila, and don't just choose either Dana or Sila. Both are equally important because as I mentioned before, either one does not compensate the other one. The bad karma from breaking precepts will run its own course, whether you do dana or not. And if you don't do dana well enough, you're a deva or you're human, but you're actually inferior compared to one who does more dana. So you lose out, to the one who does more dana. And on top of that, the Buddha says, don't just do this. Make sure that you place your lump of salt into this Ganges River. Don't just put it as in a glass of water. It becomes so salty and undrinkable. How do you do that? Oh, by practicing meditation, and watch your mind, contemplation, develop wisdom, and develop insights, into the intrinsic nature of conditioned existence, see the real nature of life, and because of that, you actually uproot ignorance. The ignorance is the one that has been causing us like a dog running around and around and around, and without end, and even if the world were to come to an end, the world were to burn in flames, when the end of the world comes, you'll still be in suffering somewhere else, in the world system, So the Buddha says it never ends, it just goes on. We've been around here for ages, for eons and eons, we don't know how long, but we are still here. So we have to make sure, we practice what the Buddha actually taught us, to uproot this ignorance gradually. Look at your six sense doors, watch your mind, and try to see everything that arises in you, in the five aggregates in terms of anicca, dukkha, anatta, make sure you actually look at anatta, because anatta, non-self, is actually the crown jewel of the Buddha's teaching. No other teachings is there non-self. In fact, all religions actually are premised upon the idea of self, on the idea of God. There's always a self to it, and you want to actually be communion with this God, self. But the Buddha's teaching is entirely different. It's actually, and the crown jewel is talking about non-self. That's how we are able to develop detachment. We are able, because there's no self to be attached to. Everything is empty. So that's how you gradually become disillusioned, disenchanted. You're able to let go, and actually you cling less. So slowly you progress along a spiritual path, from being a stream enterer all the way to, into an arahantship, to be an arahant. So we must take heed of that, and practice this, and try to uproot, ignorance gradually and but surely, so that we can actually get out from this samsara, the soonest possible time. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Brother Loo, for the sharing today. Thank you for sharing with us that it is important to perform both dana and sila equally well, that because there's no offsetting of bad karma with good karmas. And also, we have to know that the only way to actually offset, to actually cover the bad karma, is to uproot any ignorance and also cultivate our mind, our behavior, and our wisdom. So thank you, Brother Loo, for his sharing today. And then without further ado, let's end this session with the closing puja by Sister Doris. Over to you, Sister Doris.
Akka sattha ca bhummattha devanaga mahiddika punyantang anumoditva chiram rakkantu lokasasanang etthavata ca amhehi sambatang punya sampadang sabbe deva sabbe bhuta sabbe sattha anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya idam me yati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo idam me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo idam me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo imina punya kammena mame bala samagamo satam samagamo hotu ya vanibbana pattiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you everyone for watching. Do join us again next week through these channels. Thank you everyone. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.